There is evidence that the water is superhydrating, that it microclusters, and most of this research has been done by Dr. John. Dr. John is very well published. He did a lot of work with Dr. Eyring back at the University of Utah when he was in his early training. But some of my colleagues and scientists are critical of this concept because there's not a lot of support, not a lot of research on microclustering. What's been done is measure the resonating or the vibrational frequency of microclustered water, which is the water that comes out of the machine. See, there's a difference between the standard waters that we drink and the frequency that it vibrates, and the hexagonal or ionized water, which has a much lower frequency. If you just think about this, these water molecules are vibrating, and the water molecules from Kangen water vibrates at a lower frequency, allows the water molecules to cluster together closer so that there's faster penetration and simpler penetration into the cells. And this is the concept that we use to explain this. If you have a physician or a skeptic who says water is just water, tell them to look at the research by these Nobel Prize winners in 2003. Dr. Agri is a medical doctor who showed with his research and in this Nobel Prize that there are channels in cell membranes that allow for water to penetrate, and they're made up of proteins. These are called aquaporins. This is cutting-edge research. Water is not just water. And what he showed in this model, well, what he says, you can see the depiction here is this channel. The helical structure there are the proteins. Now remember, what happens to proteins when they age, when they oxidize? What happens to an egg when you fry it? It changes, right? It changes structure. What happens to collagen with age? It changes structure. What do you suppose happens to these protein channels with aging, with a lifetime of soft drinks, with a lifetime of smoking, with a lifetime of fast foods? What do you think happens to those protein channels? Do you think they change? And when they change structurally, do you think they might impede the penetration of these tiny water molecules into the cell? This is a question that hasn't been answered, but it makes perfect sense to me that this may be why Kangen water is so hydrating, because it immediately can have its antioxidant properties work on these protein structures to restore them to their native arrangements. So what he says is that these aquaporins, these channels, are the plumbing system for cells. Every cell is primarily water, but the water doesn't just sit in the cell, it moves through it in a very organized way. The process occurs rapidly in tissues, and in tissues that have these aquaporins or water channels. That's cutting-edge research.